In this bonus video, I wanted to address the 1 extra minute of math problem that I set at the end of our finding the inverse of a linear function video. It challenged you to find the inverse of the function f of x equals negative 2/3 x plus 6. But there's actually something quite subtle going on here that I thought it would be worth talking about together. Namely, it is that pesky negative sign. So to start off with, I'd love to start with just a simpler example. So let's say I have my function f of x and it equals negative 1/2 of x. Okay, so we remember that dealing with functions and their inverses, we want to start off with the input, map it to its output where it's going. So in this case, I'm multiplying by negative 1/2. And writing this a little bit differently, okay, the output of this function, according to the rule, is negative 1/2 x. Now, I want to undo this action of f by my inverse function to get back to where I started. Now, it's tempting to say, okay, let's multiply by 2 because I multiplied by something that looked like 1/2, right? Multiplying by 2 will undo multiplying by 1/2. But if we try that, we'll see it doesn't quite work. Okay? So if I try to undo this by multiplying by the reciprocal of 1/2 multiplied by 2, what I get is, well, I have the negative 1/2 x, and I multiply that by 2 to try and get back to where I started. Indeed, the 2's cancel, but that negative sign is still there hanging around. So what I end up with is negative x, the negative of where I started. So it doesn't quite work. What we need is to multiply by another negative to make sure we cancel out that negative. So let's try a slightly different rule. Let's say we're going to multiply this time not by 2 but by negative 2. And indeed, if you do that, you can see I have the negative 1/2 x. I multiply that by negative 2. This time, the 2's definitely cancel, and I've got a negative times a negative, so I get back to where I started, namely x. So that middle attempt was absolute nonsense. That didn't do anything for us. The true inverse here of f of x is g of x equals negative 2x. So let's get back to the example from the end of the last video, namely f of x equals negative 2/3 x plus 6. Well, now that we know how to deal with that negative sign, let's get on with it. So I'm going to start off with my x, and I have my two-step process. So first of all, I'm going to multiply by negative 2/3, and then I'm going to add 6. So to undo those two steps, well, to undo adding 6, I'll subtract 6. And to undo multiplying by negative 2/3, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, remembering to keep that negative. So I'll multiply by negative 3/2. So if we wrap all this up, let's just record that the inverse of f of x is g of x equals, well, let's see what's happening. This function g, the inverse, is going to start off with its input value. It's going to subtract 6, and then it will multiply the result by negative 3/2. So if we rewrite this, what we'll end up with, just distributing the negative 3/2, is negative 3/2 x. Negative 6 times negative 3/2 is positive 9. And that is our inverse function. Good job.